Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and on today's First Coast Connect, from concerns about due process for immigrants to free speech in schools, the state's criminal justice system is at a crossroads. We talked to the former president of the Florida Bar about how it's impacting ordinary residents. Then, support for those who've experienced the loss of a pregnancy or a young child. We talk with a father-turned-advocate about his upcoming fundraiser to hike up Mount Kilimanjaro. And a New Year's Eve event celebrating Amelia Island's most famous export, how you can join the annual shrimp drop. Join our conversation. Give us a call on air by calling 904-549-2937, or you can go to firstcoastconnect.org and find all the ways to connect with us. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The Trump administration is freezing child care funds to Minnesota. Clay Masters from Minnesota Public Radio reports the move follows a string of alleged fraud cases in recent years.
The acting director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Jim O'Neill, made the announcement on the social media platform X. He writes the step is in response to allegations of blatant fraud in Minnesota, and his agency has, quote, turned off the money spigot and are finding the fraud. The announcement follows a viral video from a right-wing YouTuber that featured Minnesota daycare facilities that have been part of a state-administered child care program using federal money. In a statement, Democratic Governor Tim Walz tells NPR he has been combating fraud for years, and this is a, quote, transparent attempt to politicize the issue to hurt Minnesotans and defund government programs that help people. For NPR News, I'm Clay Masters in St. Paul.
Russia attacked 2 Ukrainian ports in the Black Sea, hitting 2 civilian vessels. NPR's Joanna Kakissis reports Russia is repeatedly striking the port city of Odessa, leaving much of it without power.
Russian drones hit Odessa and the surrounding region overnight, injuring at least 6 and knocking out electricity and water again. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told reporters that his country is trying to buy more air defense supplies to protect cities from Russian forces. They definitely want to cut off Odessa, he said. They are hitting ports, killing people, and the economy, trying to reduce our exports by sea. On Tuesday, Ukraine's Navy said Russia hit 2 civilian ships that had arrived to load wheat. And now a Ukrainian drone attack has damaged a gas pipeline at a Russian port in the Black Sea. Joanna Kakissis, NPR News, Kyiv.
While much of the world is still counting down the final hours of 2025, some parts of the globe are ringing in the new year. In Australia,
3, 2, 1, Happy New Year!
Crowds gathered at the Sydney Harbour Bridge to watch the fireworks display over the Opera House to welcome 2026. Cities across Europe are also preparing to ring in the new year. In Paris, people are expected to gather along Champs-Élysées to watch the fireworks near the Eiffel Tower. In New York City, Times Square is under tight security. Mayor Eric Adams says there will be a heavy police presence there tonight.
We will have plainclothes K-9 teams, officers on horsebacks, on our trains, subway stations, and in helicopters and on boats. Pedestrians and vehicle closures will be in effect.
Millions are expected to pack Times Square to watch the ball drop at midnight. This is NPR.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News, 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. A newly redesigned giant lighted shrimp will dangle from above this evening in downtown Fernandina Beach as part of Amelia Island's annual New Year's Eve shrimp drop. Before the shrimp is ready for its first public appearance, Florida Public Utilities wants the public's help in deciding on a name for the pirate-themed mascot. Voting for your favorite is available at fpuc.com/nametheshrimp. The winning name will be announced during Amelia Island's shrimp drop celebration. That's from 5 to 8 this evening. A new bill in the Florida legislature would guarantee coverage for stuttering treatment in Medicaid, private insurance, group health plans, and HMOs. Chris Young reports the sponsor of the bill says if passed, it would help remove the stigma against the condition.
HB 785 would require coverage for speech therapy for children and adults who stutter and prohibit limits on visits. Orlando Representative Anna Escamani says the idea came after she met with a Floridian who stuttered and faced bullying and social isolation because of it. He told Escamani that speech therapy changed his life, but his access to it was always uncertain.
And so for him, this bill means that he can focus on finding his voice, not fighting with an insurance company.
Escamani, a Democrat in a Republican-controlled legislature, says she's optimistic the bill will receive support across the aisle. Democratic Senator Carlos Guillermo Smith filed the Senate version of the bill. The legislative session starts January 13th. I'm Chris Young.
It'll be cold and dry today in Northeast Florida.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Kauffman Foundation, providing access to opportunities that help people achieve financial stability, upward mobility, and economic prosperity regardless of race, gender, or geography. Kauffman.org.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, a criminal justice crossroads. From a record-setting pace of executions to an immigrant detention camp at Alligator Alcatraz, Florida's justice system is both establishing new norms and raising red flags. A statewide expert suggests what to look for in the coming year. Later in the program, a father's grief over his son's death sparks a remarkable 7-day journey up the world's highest standalone peak. But first, it's a time of enormous change and challenge in Florida's justice system, ranging from the use of AI in criminal cases to a boom year for book bans. I sat down yesterday with the former president of the Florida Bar, Michelle Suskauer, to discuss how the legal community is preparing for and responding to the current moment. Let's take a listen. Michelle Suskauer, thanks so much for being here today.
Sure, my pleasure.
So you've worked as a criminal defense attorney for a long time. You worked in the public defender's office prior to that. How does working as on the side of the defense impact how you view the criminal justice system and how you interact with it?
You know, I think it's a really great perspective because as a public defender, it was really just the most incredible job because you dealt with prosecutors and judges and experts and victims and law enforcement, and everyone is working in the same system. And so you really need to be able to get along and try to understand everybody's point of view. So that really gave me a very good basis once I left to become a private criminal defense lawyer and then eventually go into bar politics to be able to be open to listen to a lot of different sides. But of course, swimming in that pool of the criminal justice system, it's something that I'm very sensitive about and have always tried to focus on those types of issues, especially when I was president of the bar. I think I was the first or the only former public defender to ever be president, as well as we had a criminal justice summit for the first time where we brought together legislators and academics and practitioners, elected constitutional officers to talk about issues and to see if we could work together. So I think, having that skill set of trying to be collaborative has served me well moving forward.
So you have been focusing on some challenges of the moment, this time in Florida where there are so many things happening, legal challenges at the state level, so many court cases that have been moving forward either against the administration or that the administration has brought against various groups. So there's a lot of litigation happening and there's a lot of change happening. What are some of the biggest challenges that you're concerned about right now or that you're really watching closely?
Well, states are consistently challenged for laws that they enact. Florida obviously is no exception, but we're very unusual. We have some very special things in Florida that maybe other states don't have. Obviously, one of the unique issues we have is we have the president who resides, when he's not living in Washington, living in Florida. So that brings its own challenges and issues. Another issue is our immigration policy, and whether it's federal or state, and there's overlap, but we have what everybody is talking about, which is alligator Alcatraz. And that's a very significant issue, not just that particular facility, but the immigration policy in Florida. And obviously, we're seeing it all over the country. And so this is, I'm sure that the viewers are very well aware of it, but down here in South Florida, it's not too far away. And this was built in record time. And because it was built so quickly and built on protected land, there have been challenges environmentally to the facility itself. So much so that a federal judge had ordered it closed, and then it reopened, and it remains open today. So that's one of the issues that is consistent, and actually we're seeing that it's still playing out in real time, the environmental impact of that facility and where it was built and how quickly it was built.
And that obviously, as you note, is tied into this immigration issue, which a lot of people consider Florida really leading on, that a lot of the country is looking at how Florida is testing and pushing forward on changes in immigration laws, a lot of which embrace the policy of the president. And we've seen that just in this most recent legislative session. So how is the legal community impacted by that? How do the law changes regarding immigrants or people who've illegally immigrated to the United States, how's that impacting the criminal justice system?
Well, it's impacting it on a variety of different ways. So the first way, and this is up in terms of challenges to Alligator Alcatraz right now and other facilities, is an individual who has been detained does not necessarily have access to an attorney. Matter of fact, it's very, very hard to track where an individual goes, where they are. And so it's hard to have legal counsel provided if you cannot find your client. Suddenly they disappear and you don't know where they are, and the family is calling immigration attorneys, of which I'm not, saying, where's my client? Where's my family member? And having an attorney have access to them, there are challenges by a variety of different detainees about access to counsel. Another issue that is affecting the criminal justice system is that there are new laws that have bumped up, for example, a misdemeanor, a driving misdemeanor, to now a felony if you don't have legal status. Any capital crime, for example, that normally if you are found guilty, plead guilty, you get life in prison, is now the individual is now subject, if you're an illegal, to the death penalty. So the actual level of crime has risen if you are not legal, if you don't have legal status. And so the question is, equal protection issues, and you have people that are charged with the exact same thing, but because you may not have legal status, it's now a felony, or it's now subject to the death penalty as a result.
It seems like there isn't any area of professional work or education or anything these days that isn't impacted to some extent by the presence of artificial intelligence and just the world of digital information. And the law seems that it is in a particularly difficult situation right now. I've been reading a lot lately about just the volume of digital evidence and how that has become just enormously burdensome. I often am hearing about it from the prosecutor's standpoint, but there's been a lot of reporting lately on how, just because there's so much evidence that is collected now routinely, things like body cam, dash cam, doorbell camera, that there is just, even in a small case, hundreds and hundreds of hours that need to be processed and viewed and examined. How are things like the volume of digital evidence impacting the criminal justice system?
I think it's significant. It really is a significant issue. For example, it may be just a routine domestic battery. When you have a variety of different, for example, just dealing with body-worn camera, and then you have a multitude of officers, maybe from one agency or more agencies, and you have different views, and they pick up different things from the scene or individuals that they speak to, going through hours and hours of that. Obviously, it's cumbersome for law enforcement, for the state attorney who's making filing decisions, and of course for the defense who is trying to represent their client and defend them. And then if you move forward to a trial, and having to have the state present that information and having as the defense lawyer, having to cross-examine, having juries watch hours and hours, there certainly would be an impact. It trickles down in terms of delay. And courts are already pushed so much in terms of the limited amount of time that they have to hear these cases. And so, yes, it makes a significant difference. And we're seeing law enforcement use AI. And the question is, what is being in terms of their intelligence? And we, as defense lawyers, as citizens, as state attorneys, want to make sure that there's full transparency as to what's being used by law enforcement, how it's being used, and if it's accurate. Because what we're doing in the criminal justice system is we're dealing with someone's freedom. And so we want to make sure that the tools that are being used are appropriate and they're being disclosed.
And so you're thinking in terms of things like facial recognition software, for instance, where someone might be identified as a suspect in a case using a certain kind of proprietary software, but defense attorneys might not necessarily have access to how an algorithm is used or executed in order to examine whether it's reliable and fairly pointing at their client.
Absolutely. And these things are going to be litigated moving forward, and they should be by the courts. Because again, we're dealing with someone's freedom. If the state is relying on this information, this evidence from law enforcement, it needs to be tested to make sure that it passes any scientific reliability tests. And this is all new, and things are changing fast and furious, things that we've never seen before, 6 months ago, a year ago, things that are and again, we want to make sure law enforcement has the tools that they need in order to do the job they need to do to keep everyone safe. But when these tools are not tested, we want to make sure that the right individuals are arrested and subsequently convicted. And we want to make sure that those can be tested so that they're accurate.
Are there any standards in place, or are organizations like the Florida Bar pushing for more transparent or restrictive standards in terms of how digital evidence is collected, who has access to it, how it's made available to the defense or the prosecution? Are there things that you've seen in your practice that you would like to change?
Well, I think that, you have several organizations. You have the American Bar Association, the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. But I think everybody really needs to work together, both the Prosecutors Association as well as the criminal defense lawyers, to make sure, because again, we're all working in the same system. We all, even though we're on opposite sides, we're all working together to make sure that justice is done, to make sure that the information that's being collected is accurate and that there is transparency. So I'm not sure that, I don't have, any specific program that is being used to look right now to make sure and to test accuracy. But I'm sure that if it isn't in the works, it will be. Again, this is all happening in real time very quickly. And there are issues regarding transparency and giving this information to the defense to make sure that everything is being done in an appropriate way.
It might be worth giving us a little explanation of the Florida Bar and the work it does. You led the Florida Bar. As we noted, you were the first former public defender to have that role. One of the things that you created in that role was a closer look at trying to facilitate conversations between people in the law and legislators and trying to improve a dialogue, not necessarily telling people how to legislate, but to sort of create subject matter expertise on difficult matters of law and allow lawmakers to do their job when it comes to making changes that work for everybody. What role does the Florida Bar typically play in trying to advance, changes to the way the criminal justice system works or just the justice system in general?
Well, we walk a tightrope because we are the third largest mandatory bar in the country. And when I mean mandatory, when somebody takes the Florida Bar exam, you actually have to be a member of the Florida Bar as opposed to other states where it's voluntary. And so we have individuals who move down to Florida. You actually can't wave into the Florida Bar. You actually, no matter how long you've been practicing, you have to actually take the Florida Bar and pass the character and fitness in order to, and I think we have maybe over 110,000 lawyers. But we do not take a stand. The Florida Bar doesn't take a stand in terms of any specific legislation. That's not appropriate. We are not a political organization at all. And we are the Florida Bar in terms of the Florida Supreme Court is the boss. And they are the ones who regulate attorneys in Florida. And so we work very, very closely with the Florida Supreme Court. We do have an open dialogue with legislators, but we do not take a stand on any particular type of legislation. Now, we have Florida Bar sections that are specific to subject matter, and they're permitted to take legislative positions, but not the actual Board of Governors. It's a 52-member Board of Governors, or the president of the Florida Bar.
And what role has it played in criminal justice reform in general? I know that there's been some steps, including by the current president in his first term, to create some reforms, significant reforms to penalties, to prison terms, to when somebody might be eligible to get parole. Of course, there is no parole in Florida, but there have been sort of steps forward and back in terms of maybe trying to reduce the number of people that are incarcerated. Support for that, I think this president has moved away from, as has our governor, who supported it at one time and then kind of, I think, changed his view on the Florida First Step Act, which was proposed to kind of mimic that federal act. Our governor later called it a jailbreak bill. So there's been a little bit of a shift in terms of how that's viewed. But is the Florida Bar playing a big role in that? Is there any momentum in terms of trying to revive some of those efforts?
The Florida Bar is not playing a role in that because, again, that's something that the Florida Bar does not take a position on any political issues, on any legislative issues. And so we do not do that. The Florida Bar does not do that. And certainly when I was president, the Florida Bar does not do that. It's not something that we are permitted to do. We are nonpartisan. We do not take a role in terms of any political decisions or any legislation. But in terms of organizations that do, certainly there's the American Bar Association, the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, as well as the national organization, and the ACLU certainly are organizations that do that, and as well as small local voluntary bars may do that as well, but not the Florida Bar.
So the American Bar Association is kind of more of a advocacy group than the Florida Bar. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, sure. The Florida Bar is not an advocacy group at all. The American Bar Association does take stands in different legislation and certainly important issues. And that's something that we've seen. And the American Bar Association is enormous. And obviously they deal with issues both, statewide, nationally, as well as internationally. And so they're more of, an action group, but the Florida bar is not. That's not the Florida bar's role. That's not the Florida bar's lane.
Okay. I want to ask you a little bit about some issues related to the death penalty in Florida, particularly this year, where there has been a record-setting pace of executions in the state of Florida. It is at a pace that is the highest in the country, and it is well ahead of our own record. I believe 19 people executed this year.
That's correct.
What is the sense as to why that's happening and whether that might foment demand for change? What is the feeling in Florida right now by people in support of execution or the death penalty or not?
This is such an emotional issue. Not just a legal issue, but it evokes so many emotions from people on both sides, from law enforcement and our current administration, and victims' families. The death penalty is not something that is a quick process. It's a long, torturous process that many families, many individuals, victims' families, some don't even survive to see the death penalty carried out. And so I am sure that on one side, that it does not, the death penalty is not applied quick enough. But again, it's so, and then you have the other side, which is the individual who was sentenced to death, and they may have been sentenced with a jury that was not a unanimous jury at the time, because that has changed and gone back and forth. There may have been issues in terms of their representation, in terms of their mental status, in terms of the trauma, I think now Florida has executed more veterans than ever before. And so you have this dichotomy, and it's very, very tough. But again, I think that looking from a 30,000-foot view, you have, there really is, in my personal opinion, never closure. When somebody is executed, there's no closure to the victim's family. Is the death penalty a deterrent? Many argue it is absolutely not a deterrent, especially because it takes so long for executions to occur. And so it's a tough issue that is fiercely battled on both sides. But the fact that this is happening in our state, and I believe that we are 40%, or close to 40% of the executions in this country this year have happened here in Florida, is very significant, and it's what people are talking about.
The number of executions is one issue. The issue of jury unanimity is another, and you alluded to that, but Florida has gone back and forth several times in recent years as to whether juries are required to be unanimous or not unanimous, or whether they can be 10-2, or now the standard is 8-4. Florida now has the lowest standard in the country, right, second to, I believe, Alabama, which can have a 10-2 final verdict when it comes to a death penalty case. But I think that it is troubling to people, even people who support the death penalty arduously, that there is a different standard for people who are on death row, that there are people on death row and there are people that have been executed based on a different standard, on a different threshold, some requiring unanimity, some not. What is the state of that lack of equal treatment?
Well, also it's, when someone is charged, for example, with burglary, or battery, aggravated assault, rape, they have to have a unanimous verdict. And whether it's a jury of 6 or it's a jury of 12, depending on the charge, and to not have unanimity in a case where, it's the ultimate penalty that's being sought, is something that I feel should give pause. And then again, as you said, that you have some individuals who, who could potentially be sentenced to death on an 8-4, is, it's sort of hard to verbalize, but again, I think it goes back to, this is the law of the land. This is the, elections have consequences in terms of this is what the legislators want, this is what our governor wants, and this is the current state of the law. And if there's ever going to be a change, then, there'd have to be a major change in the makeup of the government locally.
Talk a little bit about the changing face of the Supreme Court here. We heard just recently that one of the Supreme Court justices, and I'm not sure I'm saying his last name correctly, Charles Kennedy. Okay.
Kennedy.
He was a Christ appointee. He's going to be leaving to teach at, I believe, the University of Florida Law School. So he is going to be replaced by the governor, which will leave the overwhelming majority of justices on the Supreme Court appointed by the governor. What does that mean for the criminal justice system, for the justice system in Florida in the years ahead?
Well, we have, Justice Kennedy was our chief judge for several terms. And so, it is the face of the Supreme Court has gotten much more conservative in the state of Florida, but it's been years that it has swung in that direction. And so I think that we're going to be seeing a variety of different, issues for, and again, it's hard to generalize and say, this is what we're going to see on these particular issues, because our Supreme Court is looking at each case on a case by case basis. And so I don't want to generalize and say it's going to go in that direction. And certainly the Supreme Court is not a rubber stamp for the governor that appointed them. They're individuals, they have their own opinions, and they will be able to make decisions appropriately. The fact that they may move in a particular direction because they were appointed by this governor sort of undercuts their independence, and they are independent. They are able to make, independent decisions. But realistically, they have moved in a, toward the right significantly, and we have a very conservative court.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to former Florida Bar President Michelle Suskauer about changes to and challenges inside the justice system. Michelle, I want to ask you about some of the big news stories of the year and a lot of legal things that people are going to be watching in the year ahead, particularly First Amendment challenges, book bans. Those are topics that have gotten a lot of national attention here in Florida. Do you have concerns about the direction that the law has been moving, or that the courts have been ruling when it comes to First Amendment rights in Florida?
Absolutely. We have been moving in the direction of reduced individual rights. And so it is very concerning when there are limitations on the books that our children have the ability to read, and for parents to make their own individual decisions as opposed to, a school district or a particular school district. So certainly that is very concerning. There are issues for that. There are other issues regarding transgender rights. And so, but, not just Florida, obviously we're seeing it in other states as well, and federally. But we have moved significantly to the right regarding individual rights and decisions that individuals can make on their own. Another issue that we're seeing also potentially coming back on the ballot is recreational marijuana. And that's something that we'll see if I believe that they're going to have to gather up signatures again. It just didn't pass the last time that it was on the ballot, but I don't think that we've seen the last of that. And I think that we're going to see that again coming up soon.
Another law that people are keeping an eye on is this pending appeal regarding the gun age in Florida that was pushed higher for certain types of guns, rifles and long guns, after the Parkland shooting happened. And then a push to undo that. Basically, it's a law that blocks anyone from under 21 from buying those weapons. Now, something unusual, and perhaps you can explain it a little bit. I know that this is a law that the Attorney General has taken the unusual step of refusing to defend in court. How strange is it for the AG? I mean, typically we think of that role as somebody defending the courts of the state. Is it strange that Uthmeier has chosen to not defend that law?
I can't speak for him. Obviously, the Attorney General is going to do what he would like to do, but it's something I don't think we've seen. Open carry is now, the law of the land in Florida, and I know that even though there are some small carve-outs in terms of areas that you cannot carry, this is a very, very big issue for law enforcement, a tremendous issue. And individual agencies and jurisdictions are looking at this and trying to figure it out as to what to do with it, because their job is to keep their residents safe. And so this is something that I know that, that law enforcement is seriously looking at in terms of, whether there can be any safe zones in order to, carve those out in order to make sure that individuals, remain safe in their communities. But open carry is not going anywhere. And there will be, I don't even know if there's even going to be tweaks to the law. We're going to see what happens in this upcoming session.
Sure, yeah, the open carry law, another big issue. Just briefly, I want to ask you about the push on social media platforms. We know that Florida has been cracking down on who has access to, particularly young people, social media platforms, but also whether social media platforms can ban certain people if they make statements that the organization disagrees with. That kind of had to do with some removals that happened on social media platforms of the president, President Trump, after the Capitol insurrection. So what are you anticipating and what are you watching for in the next year or so when it comes to laws governing social media?
Well, I know obviously there's a lot of concern about keeping children safe. There have been some just horrible incidents with young people who've taken their own lives, with bullying, with mental health challenges as a result of social media. So I think parents are very, very concerned. But again, then you're balancing that against the ability to make those specific decisions in your own home for your own children, as opposed to government intrusion into your home. And so there is that balance that the legislators have to look at in terms of what they want to do with social media. But certainly it's hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube when you have social media with no boundaries. And then to suddenly say, no, you can't use it and you can't use it. If someone wants to use social media, whatever age, they're going to find a way to do that. So I think we have to be smart, and we have to, work with parents and our communities and our schools, because it does affect children. It affects their development and it affects the way they learn and they communicate with others.
We talked a little bit about the pressures of AI and the amount of digital evidence that's involved in cases. Of course, a lot of people are experiencing some displacement with their work-life balance just in terms of the amount of connection that we have all the time. And I'm just curious, as sort of a final thought, about how the work is right now for lawyers, kind of what that landscape is like, how attractive a job it is for people at this point relative to perhaps several years or even decades ago.
The practice of law is so different than it was when I first started back in 1991. We have, we have so many tools that are able to assist in our counseling and our representation. But on the other hand, we have the issues with, because we have cell phones and there's texting and there's a variety of ways to communicate. People aren't communicating the way that they used to. And so it's, I think that the pressures of being an attorney have significantly increased. I think that there is depression, and there is, stress, and like in every profession, but it's not an easy profession to be in and to stay healthy unless you're really conscious of it and working at it. But that's another wonderful thing about the Florida bar, because the bar has resources for their 110,000+ attorneys, for mental health issues, for mentoring, to help individuals in their practicing, because most attorneys in Florida are small firm or solo practitioners. And so although it is challenging to be an attorney, it always, in my opinion, is a great time to be an attorney. And I'm proud to be a member of the Florida Bar.
Well, Michelle Suskauer, criminal defense attorney, former president of the Florida Bar. It's great to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me, and Happy New Year.
All right, you as well. And we'll be right back. Welcome back. Well, a First Coast father is transforming personal loss into an ambitious mission, raising funds to help other grieving parents. Here to tell us more is Dr. Evan Pachillo. Evan, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
I'm glad to have you. So it has been nearly 5 years since you lost your son, Joseph Angelo. He was born February 9th, 2021, and he was born at just 25 weeks. He was about 6 months into your wife's pregnancy. She also had a very difficult time. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened and what has happened since?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for the opportunity again to speak today and just share the word about Joseph and just kind of spread the word to anybody who might be in a similar situation. So Joseph, unfortunately, was born prematurely. It was an emergency preterm labor. And we knew going into the hospital that we were going to lose him. And my wife had to labor and deliver Joseph, and we got to spend a few hours with him. And then, unfortunately, right afterward, which I believe is common in preterm labor, my wife hemorrhaged, and she required emergency surgery to kind of save her from hemorrhaging, and she was just bleeding severely. So, unfortunately, Joseph, we got a couple hours with him, and it was really difficult, very traumatizing, but they were able to save my wife, thankfully, with the surgery. And it's just been a really kind of rocky road ever since. And I know it's been 5 years, but, to this day, things are still kind of just, we're just making our way through one day at a time.
Well, I'm so sorry about what you went through. And of course, the loss of a child is something that never heals. Very often, preterm labor that results in a child's death maybe doesn't get as much attention and processing available to parents. It can sometimes be overlooked. Sometimes people don't talk about it as much as they might. So what is it that you are hoping to do by talking about Joseph and the experience that you went through?
Yeah, I really just want to get the word out to other moms and dads and, even family members who have a loved one who might have lost an infant preterm or, after full gestation. It's, as a parent, you kind of walk into parenthood knowing that your job is to, one, love your children, and two, keep them safe. And when something, tragic like this happens, it just kind of shackles you with grief, and you're just kind of lost. And so by being here today, speaking with you and through other outlets as well, I'm just really hoping to share the word, make others feel like they're not alone, because you can be just kind of isolated in darkness after a loss like this, and just really trying to help other people.
And you are actually doing a fundraiser for an organization that does reach out and help families, a group that actually helped your family in the aftermath of this tragedy. Uh, Tell us a little bit about the organization and what it is that you're planning to do some fundraising for them.
That's correct. Yeah. So RTZ Hope is an organization out of California, and they specialize in helping mothers and fathers who have just recently lost a pregnancy or an infant. And it was actually started by an occupational therapist in California who she and her husband had lost their child as well, unfortunately. But really, I've tried to turn this tragedy into some purpose for us, and just kind of honor my son's life, honor Joseph's life, and give back to this organization that was able to help us in our darkest moments after we lost our son.
And you're doing a rather extraordinary journey to raise money. You're going to Tanzania. You're going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. It kind of started as a trip that my friend wanted to do, and we were on board with. And then as the planning of the trip kind of took shape, I decided to really make it into something a little bit more purposeful. And RTZ Hope was the organization that was really there for us when my wife and I were struggling after losing Joseph. And I just decided to make this kind of like a living memorial for our son, and try to raise $10,000 for RTZ Hope organization, so that that money can go to help other families who maybe have lost an infant or a preterm child as well.
And the way that you're doing this is you're allowing people to sponsor basically by the mile. This is a roughly 48-mile climb that you're going to be doing. No small feat, but you're going to be allowing people to make $1 or $5 or whatever donation they want to make per mile.
Exactly. Yeah, there's multiple ways that they can contribute. They can sponsor by mile, or they can do just a flat out donation to the organization. But yeah, we're gonna go try our best. And I saw Mount Kilimanjaro as a really kind of like a nice symbol for what it meant to be a parent losing a child, because you're losing a child, you're lost. You're just absolutely lost in your grief and your trauma. You feel like you're just staring up at the tallest mountain in the world, and you just don't ever think you could get out of your grief, and it feels that insurmountable. And so people can really just kind of jump on board and sponsor us as we take our journey to the top, one step at a time.
And I know that you've been doing some training, so it won't be insurmountable for you. And you also are, physical therapist by training. So you've got some knowledge of what it will take.
That's correct. Yeah. So I've been working hard to try to prepare, doing a lot of steps and stairs, walking with my boots and my pack on. I put about 30 to 40 pounds in a backpack that I'm going to use on the trek. And I'll just go out and walk for 5, 6, 7 miles at a time.
Well, we wish you the best of luck. It sounds like a great adventure, but also a really fitting memorial for your son. And, thank you so much for doing it. We have a link on our website if you would like to contribute to Evan's effort. Evan Pachillo, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
All right. We'll be back in just a minute. A New Year's Eve event celebrating Amelia Island's most famous export.
Join WJCT Public Media and Rick Steves for an exciting virtual wine tasting event,
February 26th at 8 p.m.
Whether you're a seasoned connoisseur or just beginning your wine journey, you don't want to miss this enchanting evening with our very own world traveler, Rick Steves. He'll share his passion for travel and wine, guiding you through a hand-picked selection of exceptional wines from the most celebrated vineyards. Reserve your spot now. Information at wjct.org/events.
Austin, Texas was known as a funky liberal haven in deep red Texas. Now there's big tech money pouring in and huge growth.
There was a warehouse district in the 80s and 90s, and there were all these punk clubs there. Now it's like gourmet chocolate and an $18 salad place.
Politics, prices, and the so-called PayPal mafia. How life is changing in one of the fastest growing cities in America. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
It's been a heavy year in the news, but at NPR, we always find time for a break.
Earlier this week, we reported on octopuses. Octopi?
A chance to dish with a friend.
Everything comes back to Love Island.
Love Island, everything. Or a quick nosh.
I mean, warm and potatoey on the inside, and then the hint of onion. Oh.
Give back to the station that brings you joy and wonder, along with the news, by making your gift today.
Visit wjct.org/donate.
TV writers are responsible for all our favorite small screen moments. The jaw-dropping twists, the steamy kisses, and the epic showdowns. They write, discuss, and rewrite with lots of feedback along the way. So how do you get a job as a TV writer? And what's it really like? We go inside the writer's room to answer your questions next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. A local New Year's Eve event puts a coastal twist on a Times Square tradition. Here to talk about the annual shrimp drop is RJ Secret, president of Light Up Amelia. RJ, thanks for being here.
It's an honor to be here.
Well, I'm very glad to have you. So this is the 10th year of the shrimp drop on
is.
Amelia Island, and it's really become a signature event up there. Tell us a little bit about its origins, because Light Up Amelia was pretty much central to its creation.
Yes. We started in 2010 doing the hometown 4th of July celebration, and it kept getting bigger and bigger every year. And on 2015, we decided we have to do something else. This is just great organization, and the city deserves it. And we put together a committee, which is Light Up Amelia, and their members are local officials, Sarah Pelican, Charlie Corbett, school board member Joe Zimmerman, business leaders Amy and Mike Ryan, and home builder Philip Smith. And our liaison to the city is Battalion Chief Jason Higginbotham. So we got together and said, we got to do something else. This is so good for the residents of Fernandina Beach. We said, well, New Year's Eve. So everybody looked at, what a great idea. Said, what do we do? Do we just do it at midnight, or no, how about a drop? Let's drop something like New York. But we want to make it family friendly.
Well, and also sort of something that really speaks about Amelia Island and Fernandina Beach. Right. And of course, shrimp is a big part of the cultural identity.
Right. So we said, what can we drop? Exactly right. It was no-brainer.
Yeah.
We're the birthplace of the shrimping capital of the world. Said a shrimp. So that just took a life of its own. And the first shrimp that we dropped was made out of styrofoam.
Uh-huh.
Our employees from Florida Public Utilities created it. And it took a life of its own. That thing, everybody loved it. But being styrofoam, one year was too windy.
Yeah.
And it was just swaying.
That's right.
It was swaying too much. So say, well, we got to build a metal
more
one.
Permanent right.
One.
And so you're unveiling that this season. You're also going to be asking people to join in trying to name it. Yeah. Why did you want to name it?
It's going to be an electric theme. So the names that people are going to choose has to be like Watson, lumen.
It's all like it's sort
thin,
of celebrating the LED version
exactly.
of it. Yeah.
But
And
and
this-
before, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, so you were saying that part of the deal with this event is that it's not a midnight drop. A lot of
No.
times that is a midnight event. Certainly in New York, it is. But you do yours aligned with Greenwich Mean Time.
Yes, and that's what when we're talking about what we want to do, we want to make it family friendly. We want the family to take their kids, enjoy a New Year's Eve party, and we got face painters and things that are for kids. We give away, and Florida Public Utility is going to give away New Year's Eve party favors, hats, beads, T-shirts, noisemakers. So if people, when they go, please visit FPU's VIP tent, because you can go to get free hats, beads.
Swag of all kind. And so this event is on the river. It's
On the marina.
Yeah, so it's
Yes.
down at the end of Center
At the
Street,
end of Center
essentially, and it begins at 5, it ends at 8, so it really is kind of in this family-friendly
really
chunk of
is.
time, but 7 o'clock is when the
It's
shrimp
drops.
drops.
Yep.
And then there's a big fireworks celebration.
It is. And we have a great relationship with our pyrotechnics company. And I tell you, right now, pyrotechnics is really expensive. But since we've been together for 10 years, they give us a great deal. And we do probably a good, almost half-hour fireworks show, which is unheard of for a small town and small committee like ours, because it takes a lot of money now to put a fireworks show together.
Yeah, it does. And so in addition to the name, the shrimp, people would expect to kind of see this event. We should say that this was ranked right after, by USA Today, it was ranked, I think, the third drop event, well
Yes.
ahead of the Times Square one.
We were number one for like 4 days, but then at the end of the voting, we ended up third last year, and a potato beat us out.
A potato
in Idaho.
It's hard to compete with a potato.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Well, I know it'll be a great event. Always a big crowd that turns out for it.
It really is.
Well, congrats on the 10th year of successful
It
shrimp
is.
dropping.
And we're looking forward to every year. The attendance keeps doubling. We used to do it only on one parking lot. Now we have to have 2.
Wow.
Because there's so many people. The marina is full from people from around the world that they come and park there for a couple of days, and then they keep going south for the winter.
Well, RJ Cray, it is a pleasure to have you here. Thanks so much and good luck with it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having us. This is a great opportunity for us to showcase our shrimp drop.
Absolutely, our pleasure. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have comments or questions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at wjct.org. And if you missed anything, you can go to firstcoastconnect.org. First Coast Connect is produced by Stacey Bennett. Our associate producer is Isabella Caspow. Our director is Brady Quorum. And our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. We're taking a break for the rest of the week to celebrate the new year, but we'll be back Monday to discuss the big local stories to watch in 2026. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Highway, hospital, home, work. Where injuries happen can make a difference in the law and the outcome.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
On the First Coast, the records keep spinning. Anthology 89.9 HD3 delivers the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. Songs you know by heart. Anthology 89.9 HD3.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Ever come up with an idea for a TV pilot?